I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch network. So over the weekend, Donald Trump called for the termination of the United States Constitution in a statement that he put out on his social media platform. And have Republicans condemned that? No, far from it. Republicans went on news shows thereafter and essentially supported it and said that they would still support Donald Trump or anyone who supports the termination of the Constitution so long as they are a Republican. So the Republican Party is a completely lawless party. I want to talk about the serious nature of that and what it means that if at a base level Republicans can support our Constitution and that they would support someone who believes in terminating the United States Constitution, how do you have a discussion with a political party that is 100% fascist at this point? And that's what we need to call them. We don't call them conservatives. But before having that discussion, first I want to play for you one of the clips that I saw this weekend. This is from Representative Dave Joyce, who went on the George Stephanopoulos show, ABC, this week, and he was pressed by Stephanopoulos. Now, Stephanopoulos used the word suspend the Constitution. He should have used the word terminate the Constitution, but nonetheless, a former president, someone who leads a major political party, calling for the suspension or termination of the Constitution is incredibly dangerous. But here in this clip, you'll see Dave Joyce, a MAGA Republican from Ohio. And by the way, Dave Joyce is a former prosecutor. I want you to think about that. That's what he did before being a member of Congress. This was a former prosecutor. And Dave Joyce on the Stephanopoulos show said, I'll fall behind whoever, and it doesn't matter to me if someone wants to terminate the Constitution. As long as they say they're a Republican, that's all I need. Here, play this clip.
Donald Trump was your nominee in 2016 and 2020. You voted for him in 2016 and 2020. Now he's talking about suspending the Constitution. Can you support a candidate in 2024 who's for suspending the Constitution?
Well, again, it's early. I think there's going to be a lot of people in the primary. I think at the end of the day, you will say whoever the Republicans end up pick, I'll fall in behind because that's...
Even if it's Donald Trump and he's called for suspending the Constitution?
Well, again, I think it's going to be a big field. I don't think Donald Trump's going to clear out the field like he did in 2016.
But that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking you, if he's the nominee, will you support him?
I will support whoever the Republican nominee is. And I just don't think that at this point he'll be able to get there because I think there's a lot of other good quality candidates out there.
That's a remarkable statement. You'd support a candidate who's come out for suspending the Constitution?
Well, you know, he says a lot of things. You have to take him in context. And right now, I have to worry about making sure as a Republican governance group and a Republican majority that we make things work for American people. And I can't be really chasing every one of these crazy statements that come out from any of these candidates at the moment.
But that's an extraordinary statement. You can't come out against someone who's for suspending the Constitution?
Well, first off, he has no ability to suspend the Constitution. Secondly...
But he says he's for it.
Well, you know, he says a lot of things, but that doesn't mean that it's ever going to happen. So you got to accept exact fact from fantasy. And fantasy is that we're going to suspend the Constitution and go backwards. We're moving forward, and we're going to continue to move forward as a Republican majority and as a Republican conference.
I don't see how you can move forward if your candidate is for suspending the Constitution, but thank you for your time this morning.
You know, as I watched that clip, too, I reflected on other Republican leaders, modern-day Republican leaders, and their views, and also reflecting the same thing. So do you recall we did a video on this a few weeks back, but when former Vice President Pence was promoting his book, that who knows if it even sold any copies, but when former Vice President Pence was promoting his book, he did all of these media appearances and one on CNN, which he did this town hall. And he was asked during the interview, or during the town hall, why did you support all of these election deniers who wanted you killed? Like, why would you support the candidates who violated their oaths or potentially future oaths if they hadn't already been in office, and were part of an insurrection where one of the ultimate aims was to have you get killed? And it's just one of the most bizarre, robotic responses. We'll play the clip, but Pence is like, well, it's because I am a Christian, and then I am a conservative, and then I'm a Republican. So even if someone wants to kill me or commit mass atrocities in the country, if they are a Republican or a conservative or a Christian, I will support them. Play this clip.
Talking about the 2022 election, and I think that your analysis is one that is generally accurate, that the candidates who were hung up on the election lies of 2020 did not fare as well in 2022 as the ones who stepped forward and talked about the future. And I know you know better than anyone in a bad way what those election lies can mean in terms of crowds being incited. I was surprised to see you campaigning for Don Baldock in New Hampshire and Blake Masters in Arizona, who were two people who lied about the election, who defeated, one could argue, better candidates in the Republican primaries, who were future-leaning candidates. Why did you endorse them? Why did you support them? Why did you campaign for them?
Well, you know, I've often said I'm a Christian, a conservative, and a Republican in that order. But I'm a Republican. And once Republican primary voters had chosen their nominees, I went out and traveled to 35 states over the last year and a half to see if we could elect a Republican majority in the House and Senate, elect Republican governors all across the country. It didn't mean, as it hasn't meant in the past, that I agree with every statement or every position candidates that I'm supporting in the Republican Party have taken, but I was pleased to do it.
I mean, what is that? And I'm going to play for you one more clip. This is a clip of Bill Barr, probably also selling the book, because that's what these cowards do. They go out there, they sell their books, and then they say things that tries to distance themselves from Trump. But then when they're asked, would you still vote for him? They will be like, yeah, I would still vote for him. So this is the interview where Bill Barr explains that Donald Trump's theft of government records, including top secret records, would provide a legitimate basis for him to be criminally prosecuted under the Espionage Act and for obstruction and for other crimes, and that the Department of Justice likely has a basis to criminally prosecute Donald Trump. This is what Bill Barr, the former Attorney General, said in this interview, but then was asked, well, would you support if a Democrat ran against Donald Trump, or if Trump ran again, after you've said that Donald Trump tried to overthrow our government, after you said Donald Trump led a coup, after you said Donald Trump is completely lawless and fascist, would you vote for the fascist? And Bill Barr goes, yeah, I would. Here, play this clip.
Could you vote against him? Could you vote not for the Republican if Donald Trump were the Republican nominee?
Well, again, I think it gets down to what I said, which is I would have to make the judgment at that point, the impact on the country, and I'll have to see what's going on in the world, who the Democratic nominee is. If it's a progressive Democratic nominee, I can't imagine voting for him.
But ideologically progressive versus somebody who orchestrated an attack on the Capitol, who betrayed his oath to the Constitution, as you said in your words, you still might vote for him.
I mean, look, I could play you many more clips like this, but we would be here not just for one full day, but we'd be here for many full days, because this is what Republicans say over and over again. And they would support, you've heard it in their own words, somebody who would want to terminate the United States Constitution based also on completely bogus and dangerous QAnon conspiracy theories about why President Biden won the election. That is what the current Republican Party believes, and it is incredibly, incredibly dangerous. But let's pull back for a second here, and let's reflect on the broader conversation, because these are individuals, and they use language. We need to make things work for American people, and we're strict constitutional constructionists. You know, all just complete BS. You're in it for power, ostensibly for the sake of power, yet you fall in line with this weird and dangerous fascist cult doing nothing for the American people. I mean, all you do is you go on and you spread lies, and you're the most recent MAGA Republican kind of bizarre freak out is that leading up to the 2020 election, Twitter allegedly took down photographs of Hunter Biden's genitalia, and that the MAGA Republicans believe that those photographs should still be posted, and that was the government working with Twitter to do bad acts when Biden wasn't even the government. In October 2020, Trump was the government. Trump led the executive branch, and even by the admission of all these bizarre conspiracies, the Trump administration, the actual government, was asking for similar type of takedowns, but regarding legitimate things that should remain up, like true facts about COVID and other things that are accurate, not the bizarre and despicable things that the MAGA Republicans want to continue to spread and keep out there. So the broader question, though, is like, at a base level, if MAGA Republicans believe that the United States Constitution should be overthrown, how could you take this party seriously to do anything, to have any conversation on any issue at all, whether we're talking about healthcare, whether we're talking about education, whether we're talking about infrastructure, whether we're talking about we're talking about freedoms, where we're talking about a woman's freedom over her body, people's right to marry who they want to marry, whether we're talking about health care for veterans who come back from overseas and making sure they get the best health care imaginable, when we talk about working conditions, when we talk about these types of issues, how do you have a conversation with people who at a baseline are okay with the notion of the United States Constitution being terminated? And the answer to that is you really can't. And the answer is that in the absence of the media calling out what's taking place, with the both sides ism that exists, and I want to give George Stephanopoulos credit, because other than using the word suspend, which he shouldn't have, it was terminate, because that's what Donald Trump said here. Let me just read Trump's statement so you see what Trump actually said. He was saying that a massive fraud of this type and magnitude allows for the termination of all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution. Our great founders did not want and would not condone false and fraudulent elections, just complete BS. But I do want to praise Stephanopoulos, though, for continuing to push Congressmember Dave Royce, who is trying to wiggle out of it. But when you ask Royce, when you ask Pence, when you ask Barr, so you would still support someone who believes in terminating the Constitution and overthrowing our government, even with violence. Well, as long as they are Republicans, whatever, we'll do whatever. And that's why, in the absence of the media doing their role, we gotta do the role together as this community. We gotta spread these videos, and we gotta talk to people, and we gotta let Americans know there's a reason that there was a blue wall that held during the midterms, because we need to get out the accurate information to Americans that this is just who the Republican Party is and how dangerous that is. We need to build a new type of independent media. We need to build this organic community even bigger, and we got to spread the truth each and every day here. It's what we're going to do on the MeidasTouch Network. So please hit the subscribe button. We're on our way to 1 million subscribers. Thanks to your support, hit subscribe now. And in addition, please consider becoming a patron of the MeidasTouch Network by going to patreon.com/MeidasTouch, patreon.com/MeidasTouch, patreon.com/MeidasTouch. We have lots of exclusive content you can only get on our Patreon site, but most importantly, help grow this independent media platform, since we're not funded by any outside investors at all. So We're 100% independent and 100% accountable to you. Until next time, I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network.
At MeidasTouch, we are unapologetically pro-democracy, and we demand justice and accountability. That's why we're spreading our message to Convict 45. That's right, gear up right now with your Convict 45 tees and pins at store.meidastouch.com. That's store.meidastouch.com.